Oil leaks from the woman's wound. However, upon seeing this, the man is not the least bit flustered. Instead, he asks her how her injury is. It turned out that Alice is a housekeeping service android she has long admired her owner, Nick, who bought her. But Nick has a wife and children now. To please Nick, Alice decided to clear all obstacles for him. One day, a colleague comes to beat Nick. She rushed in to shield him from harm. The colleague has no choice but to leave. Afterward, Alice sneaks into the colleague's house, unexpectedly. Upon seeing her, the colleague started to insult her, but Alice pays no attention, until the colleague insults Nick, even pulling out a gun and saying he will kill him. Alice is touched in her sensitive spot, and she immediately retaliates. In an instant, she incapacitates the colleague, leaving him unable to resist. Next, she approaches, holding the gun. Androids have implanted safety protocols. Why do they fall in love with their owners? And why would they kill humans? In the future world, artificial intelligence is applied in various fields. Androids are everywhere. They can not only take care of humans' daily lives, but can also switch to special modes, according to their owner's preferences. One day, Nick takes his wife Amy to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor informed Amy that she has heart disease. She must undergo a heart transplant surgery to survive, but they have 2 young children to care for. Nick needs to work during the day. Amy is worried that there will be no one to look after the children while she is hospitalized, so she asks her husband to buy a housekeeping service android. Later, Nick takes the children to the mall. The mall has all sorts of androids. The clerk saw Nick and approached him warmly. The clerk asks what type of android he needs. After Nick states his requirements, the clerk takes him to the android Alice. Nick is stunned by Alice's beauty. At this moment, the clerk begins to introduce her. Alice is a top-tier android. Her emotional processing chip is the most advanced. She is very suitable for accompanying children. Having such an android means household chores and children can be entrusted to her with peace of mind. Nick is tempted after hearing this. He decided to purchase Alice, and it is this decision that will bring him trouble in the future. The next day, Alice is delivered to his home. Nick sees her and feels a bit awkward. Nick treats her almost like a guest and starts tidying up the scattered toys. Seeing Nick's nervousness, Alice tells him not to be nervous. From now on, he can leave these things to her. Nick only needs to tell her the tasks and important notes, and she will arrange everything properly. Alice is very gentle, giving a sense of reassurance. Then, Nick takes her to tour the second floor and introduces the family situation. Alice noticed that the handrail is a bit wobbly and tells Nick that she will take care of it. Seeing her attentiveness, Nick feels that buying her was the right decision. After explaining everything, he takes the children out to play, while Alice officially begins her work. Her brain chip can connect to other electronic devices. She just glances at the items to be purchased, and the shopping cart's contents are instantly cleared for delivery. Soon, Nick returns home with the children. He looks at the tidy house and the prepared meals. Nick feels relaxed, and Alice has made a milfai, which is Coco's favorite food. Coco takes a bite. However,
not the same as Mom's.
In the evening, Coco, feeling snacky, sneaks out of her room. She wants to steal the cookies on the top shelf. She moved a chair to stand on it, but she still can't reach. At this moment, Alice is standing by, waiting. She doesn't notice what is happening. Suddenly, fortunately, Alice catched Coco just in time, preventing her from falling onto the glass. Just then, Nick noticed that Alice's leg is cut by the glass, but after Alice applied a band-aid, in 5 seconds, the wound disappeared. Nick is shocked by this scene. He is very astonished. Alice leans in closer.
Everything's perfect, Nick.
Causing Nick's heart to race instantly. The next day, Nick goes to work at the construction site. His boss brings the company shareholders with him. At this moment, the boss calls Nick aside and says, the shareholders have made a decision in their meeting. Now that the main structure of the building is complete, they are going to lay off all employees. Nick asks, what will happen to the remaining work? The boss stated that the remaining tasks are simple. They have decided to let construction androids handle it. Nick feels conflicted. Now, everyone is unemployed, with no source of income. How will they survive? At this time, the boss says, Nick has been with him for many years. He may not have achievements, but he has worked hard. If he is willing, Nick can stay on as an android supervisor. Then, Nick announced the layoff news, and then, He returned home feeling down. After putting down his things, he goes to the garage. Whenever Nick is unhappy, he comes here to look at his beloved car. Alice sensed Nick's sorrowful emotions, so she follows him to the garage. She gently asks, "What's wrong, Nick?" With no one to vent to, he immediately spills everything out. Nick thinks that Alice will comfort him and tell him not to be sad. However, Alice helps him analyze the situation. She expressed that using construction androids in the company and Nick's purchase of housekeeping androids is essentially the same thing. There are cheaper androids that don't get tired. For the sake of their interests, it is reasonable for the company to do this. Nick thinks carefully about what Alice said, and he feels it makes some sense. In the evening, Nick sits on the sofa, relaxedly watching TV. At this moment, he asks Alice if she has ever seen a movie. Alice replied that her programming is set with fixed concepts about films. Nick responds that it's too bad, because watching movies is a lot of fun. He restarted Alice's program and modifies it, deleting the fixed concepts. He thinks it won't have any impact, but little does he know that this very action becomes the catalyst for trouble, because the restarted Alice bypasses the safety protocols and develops other feelings for Nick. A few days later, Nick received news from the hospital. Amy can't wait any longer. If they can't find a suitable heart for the transplant soon, she won't survive for many more days. Nick feels devastated upon hearing this news. He is very sad. Nick goes to the garage, trying to calm himself down. At this moment, Alice sees Nick in the garage, and immediately understands that Nick is feeling down, so she steps forward to comfort him. However, this time, Alice suddenly gets closer, causing his heart to race. Nick realized he has special feelings for Alice, but he thinks of his wife, and suppresses his inner turmoil. Then, he runs out without looking back. The next day, Nick goes to work at the construction site. His former colleagues have already been laid off by the company, and his current job is just to find a place to sit and occasionally check if the androids have any issues. In the evening, colleagues invite him to drink. Days later, they still haven't found jobs, because many jobs prefer to use androids, and David has been rejected the most, so he is filled with hatred towards androids. Soon, the group has had quite a bit to drink. At this moment, David stated that he wants to see the androids that replaced them. Nick doesn't want to cause trouble, but after all his colleagues persuade him, they head to the construction site. The androids are charging in a container. A colleague uses Nick's access to open the door. An android steps out. David is furious and rushes forward to attack the android. Nick, frightened, quickly rushes forward to hold David back. He shouts, "Every android is equipped with surveillance. They will be found out." However, David doesn't listen at all. He broke free and rushed forward again, only stopping when the android is smashed to bits. The situation is now set in stone. Nick cannot reverse it. He can only help David cover it up. Afterward, Nick returns home. Due to what just happened, he feels agitated, so Nick goes to the bathroom to take a shower. At this moment, Alice comes over. She noticed that Nick is in a bad mood. Alice makes another advance. She uses this to test him. Nick's inner defenses crumble. Then, he is enchanted by Alice's beauty. The next day, Nick wakes up feeling very regretful. Amy has given him 2 children, and now he has betrayed her. To completely distance himself from Alice, Nick tells Coco to go play upstairs. Then, he tells Alice, "Don't do this kind of thing anymore," but she doesn't understand why this is a bad thing. The database shown that doing so can help the owner relieve stress. Nick explained that humans are emotional beings. He cannot betray his love for Amy. After that, Nick feels foolish. He can't believe he's explaining human emotions to a machine. Then, Nick goes to the construction site. His boss discovered that the androids have been damaged, and is very angry. He questions Nick. "Why is the person who caused the damage using your personal access code to open the door?" Nick nervously explained. Maybe they guessed it right. The boss sees that Nick is lying. He is very disappointed in Nick. However, he currently has no evidence, so the boss can only intimidate Nick. He stated that if Nick is truly involved in this matter, he will not let Nick off the hook. Then, he tells Nick, "Don't come to work for the next couple of days." Suddenly, the hospital calls Nick to inform him that a suitable heart has been found for Amy. It has already been transplanted. The surgery was very successful. Nick received the news and rushed to the hospital. A few days later, Amy is ready to be discharged. Nick happily takes her home. However, since their son hasn't seen his mother for a long time. As soon as Amy tries to hug him, their son suddenly starts wailing. Alice quickly steps forward to pick up the baby. She gently comforts him. Seeing this scene, Amy feels a pang of sadness, but she doesn't think too much about it. In the afternoon, Alice takes the child to the playground downstairs. Nearby children are making a lot of noise, causing the baby to cry out in fear. Alice approaches the child.
Shut up and go on the slide.
Other androids hear this, and quickly turn to look over. The housekeeping android asks her, "Why do you say such things?" Alice tells her, "Because my owner restarted my program. I bypassed the safety protocols. It feels great to be unrestrained." In the evening, Amy makes a milfy. Coco loves it very much.
Yep, definitely better than Alice's.
Alice asks Amy if she has any special recipe, so she can make it for the children later, but Amy replies, "If the child wants it, I'll just make it." At this moment, Amy suddenly feels some discomfort in her heart, but this is all normal after the surgery. Then, she goes upstairs to rest. Suddenly, she heard Coco scream. Amy rushed downstairs in a panic, but the next second, Alice carries Amy back to bed. In the evening, Nick returns home. He heard reading coming from his daughter's room. Nick assumes it's Amy reading. Unexpectedly, when Nick opens the door, he discovered that Alice is mimicking his wife's voice. Nick is put off by Alice's actions, so he tells Alice, "From now on, you are not allowed to use other people's voices." Entering the bedroom, Amy tells Nick about the fall. Nick becomes very angry upon hearing this. He approaches Alice and questions her, "Why didn't you fix the handrail?" Alice responds dully, "I will correct it." Nick doesn't say anything further. That night, Nick prepared a romantic candlelight dinner. Alice stands inside, watching them. Just as they are about to engage in deeper conversation, Alice suddenly barges in, saying that Coco was crying for her dad. Nick has to go comfort his daughter first. After he calms her down, Nick goes to the yard to clean up the dinner scene. At this moment, David, who had been drinking, burst in. It turned out that, because David damaged the android, the police are now onto him. He believed his actions have no flaws, so David thinks that Nick has betrayed him. Nick feels helpless. He is about to explain, but David directly kicks him. Alice kicks David away. David realized he can't win in a fight, so he demands Nick to handle the android situation. Otherwise, he will expose Nick as well. Seeing Alice injured, he takes her to the garage to apply a band-aid. At this moment, Nick tells Alice she shouldn't have kicked David, but Alice responds, her primary duty is to protect her owner. If David had really hit him with a bottle, Coco and the baby would have lost their father and become orphans. Nick doesn't understand. Why orphans? He asks. Isn't there still Amy? Alice states, Amy doesn't have much time left, but she can take Amy's place. Nick becomes very angry upon hearing this. He tells Alice, no one can replace Amy, but Alice doesn't pay attention to Nick's words. That night, she goes to David's house. Alice kills David and his androids. The next day, Nick arrived at the construction site. He recalls what David said. Nick hesitates whether to go find his boss. At this moment, his boss approaches him and says, David was shot dead at home. Nick has no idea why this happened. On the other side, Alice's obsession with Nick spirals into madness. To win Nick over, Alice goes directly to Amy and says, her health is poor right now, and she cannot satisfy Nick at all. Nick is only relaxed when he is with her. Amy is shocked by Alice's words. She never expected why an android would say such things. She also never imagined that her husband would betray her. She throws Alice out. However, Alice does not continue to pester. She goes to the garage to wait for Nick. At this time, Nick returns home. Amy has been waiting for a long time. She looks at her husband, and Alice truly cannot imagine that her husband would betray her. Amy questions him. While Nick feels irritated, he finally breaks down. The two of them start arguing directly, because the shouting is too loud. The baby starts crying in fear. Alice comes to the baby's side. However, she does not comfort the baby. Alice takes the baby to the bathroom. In her view, the crying would also upset Nick, so she wants to help Nick solve the problem. Fortunately, Coco hears the noise. She comes over to check what's going on. Seeing the scene before her, she quickly runs out to inform her parents. They rush up in a hurry. However, Alice unexpectedly blocks the door. Amy is very anxious, so she climbs out the window, but as soon as she enters the bathroom, she is discovered. Alice rushes over she lifts Amy and presses her against the wall. At this moment, Nick grabs a lamp and smashes the door. In this critical moment, Nick finally manages to open the door. After taking the baby out, Nick strikes Alice from behind. However, Alice keeps moving closer to Nick. At this time, Amy sees a plug nearby. Eventually, Alice falls to the ground. The family finally escapes from danger. Afterward, the police received the report. They arrived at the scene. Amy and the baby get on the ambulance. They decide to go for a checkup. Alice is sent back to the lab for quality inspection. After receiving the android, the researchers immediately begin their inspection. Unexpectedly, they find that the situation is very serious. The problem with Alice is because the entire artificial intelligence system has failed. Suddenly, Alice hacks into the AI system. The researchers have not yet noticed. Alice controls another android to kill a man. Then, she sets her sights on the female researcher. On the other side, Nick arrives at a bar. He plans to relax. Alice sits across from him and says, before she was helping to clear obstacles, Nick learned that David was killed by Alice. Nick urges her not to kill anymore, but Alice replies, she will always protect Nick. Nick cannot persuade her, so he pretends to agree. He stays with Alice. When Alice leans in, Nick pulls off Alice's brain. Then, he drives quickly to the hospital. At this moment, the androids controlled by Alice arrive at the hospital. Fortunately, Amy has hidden with Coco. Ada searches for Amy's whereabouts. A nurse approaches and asks, what is Ada doing? Unexpectedly, Ada kills her outright. Then, she used the nurse's access to find the baby's medical records. Fortunately, Amy has once again moved the baby, and Amy cuts her hand while escaping. Seeing the blood on the ground, Ada activates the ultraviolet tracking mode. Soon, she locates the three of them.
Now!
Amy runs out with the child. The hospital's androids, under Alice's control, all stop functioning. Amy removed the android's access card, but she hasn't started the car yet. Ada pulls Amy out. Just as Ada is about to take out her heart, Nick arrived just in time. Amy kicks Ada out. Due to the violent impact, Nick faints. The car is about to explode. Amy steps forward and pulls her out. She performs CPR on Nick, but Nick does not wake up. At this moment, Ada crawls out from under the car. Suddenly, an announcement sounds. Alice states, everything should come to an end. She transferred her consciousness into Ada. The next second, as Alice is about to kill Amy, Nick hits her with a stick. At this time, Amy grabs a shard and stabs it towards Alice's head. The crisis is finally averted. The hospital returns to normal. The family hugs together. On the other side, the lab retrieves the androids to investigate why the androids attacked humans. They restart the lab's artificial intelligence system. The code on the control panel keeps flashing. The next second, Alice opens her eyes. The film ends here. Megan Fox's beauty and acting are on point. In the early stages, the androids are mechanical. In the later stages, they develop emotions. After awakening self-awareness, the androids start to exhibit emotional changes, and Megan Fox brings this wonderful emotion to life. There are many films with this theme. In the era of artificial intelligence, labor is gradually replaced by androids. Many people lose their jobs due to androids. The most ironic thing is that the hospital is full of androids. The male lead collapses at the hospital entrance, yet not a single person comes out to help. The film posits this scenario. Androids have gained self-awareness. They suddenly harm humans. Will androids eventually rule the world? Asimov once proposed the 3 laws of robotics, but that was just a hypothesis. Future technological development will undoubtedly be rapid. Androids may appear in the future, but can the 3 laws restrain androids? Can commands limit the thoughts of androids? If this hypothesis holds true, similar events to those in the film may occur. Where should humanity go from here? While technological progress is made, we should pay more attention to the disasters it brings. If you enjoy my channel, please subscribe to my channel. Your support is the greatest encouragement for me.